Today's Dota video is made possible because of Raid. Now, before you go judging me, have you ever actually played the game? It's a turn-based fighting game with over 800 heroes, and you get $100 in rewards with the Game Leap link in the description if you sign up now. It's completely free, and it works on PC and all mobile devices. Go and click the link down below right now to claim your $100 in reward. It helps us keep going, and it's a fun and casual game. Sign up and give it a try now. Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we got 8 new builds for 7.35D. These are 8 builds that I think are really powerful in the current meta, and let's get into it. Alright, so the first build of the video is a stolen build. I didn't come up with this one. I didn't see it through pubs. I saw it through a pro game, and it was Thompson. So he actually also has picked it in pubs recently. He's played 5 games and won 4 of them. Pretty good. And what he does is he plays mid bounty hunter. Yeah, you heard that right, mid bounty hunter. So what is so good about mid bounty hunter? Well, I've been a fan of bounty hunter for a while now. I really think that this hero is underrated, and I think it's kind of better than ever. The build that I like and that he goes as well is phylactery because it works with track. Every single time you track someone, it like giga slows them. And it's really nice because then, right, track is a huge cast range. It sets up for your shuriken, it sets up for your Janata, it lets you close the gap with your invis. And so yeah, the build that you go is you go bottle because of course you're a mid with like a bunch of branches and tangos. Then phase boots, obviously if it's a good stick lane, you can go stick. If it's a good raindrop lane and you're against SF and you need it, you can go raindrops, right? These items are of course all fine. But then you go phase boots into windlace. After that, magic wand if the game calls for it, then into phylactery after phylactery axe. Now you might be like, oh Speed, why don't I just upgrade the phylactery immediately into Conda? Well, I actually done testing, and funny enough, I did this testing a long time ago, and Conda on Bounty Hunter doesn't feel that good. Like, compared to Ags and the timing that Ags is, which is insane because it applies Janata and it applies bonus cast range to the shuriken. It's just not even close because the Janata application to the shuriken is insane. It gives you the bonus gold every time you toss in the shurikens towards the enemy, right? It just makes a big difference for getting that gold going, getting you to your next item. So yeah. After that, he goes Conda, which honestly, I'm not gonna lie, guys, even then, I would recommend going BKB. I think like people will overestimate how good Conda is because it's like, oh my god, damage and I crit, and it's like, you already crit on the shuriken, and it really doesn't, it just doesn't do that much for my testing. Just go BKB so you can stay alive. And yeah, in terms of the skill build, because you're probably wondering about that too, the skill build is 4-1-1 or 4-2-0. Thompson prefers going 4-2-0, which is maxing shuriken, 2 points in Janata. He takes Janata at level 1, he tries to pick it into melee heroes, right, which makes sense so you can actually hit them, but he doesn't take a point in invis until like level 8, right, or level 9 sometimes, and I just don't agree with it. I think in order to get around the map, especially if you want to play this like offlane as well, which you can, I don't really think that no invis is good. It's not like Janata scales insanely well. It scales okay. So yeah, I personally like 4-1-1. He likes 4-2-0, and he plays around track movement speed, phase boots to just close the gap, right? Doesn't need the invis, which I totally understand. It also conserves some mana. So I think either one is justifiable, but basically max shuriken at the end of the day. It does bonus damage on enemies that are tracked, and you'll see in the early game with phylactery, it is ridiculous. And finally, the last thing to say about mid bounty hunter, as this is one of the most interesting builds of the patch, is that at level 25, you get Janata has no cooldown. It is really funny. It's like really funny because you just start beating people with, because you can scale, right? You can just buy a ton of right-click items like Abyssal, AC, Sanjinyasha, right? And you can just have no cooldown on Janata. You just run up to someone, you just steal all their gold if they have a bunch of unsafe gold or unreliable gold, and you do a ton of bonus damage. It's really nuts. Okay, the next build is a lot more simple, so I'll slow it down for you guys, and it's Lycan. Lycan just received a lot of buffs for this patch. I think offlane Lycan is going to be a staple of the meta. Funny enough, I think it's better in pubs than it is in pro games, from what I've seen, but yeah, Lycan, why is he so good right now? Well, it's mainly the changes to the hero in general over the last few patches, but also in the most recent patch, which is what we'll focus on, is Helm of the Dominator changes. If you don't know what they did is that now when you dominate a creep with the Helm of the Dominator, you get the gold. And this might not seem like a big deal. You might be like, it's like 60 gold every so often, like in already flash farms, but it adds up, right? And it adds up quick, especially considering, you know, a lot of the time your creep is dying and you just need to take over a new creep, or you just happen to not get the creep you want and you want to go take over a new one. It's like, okay, boom, I get an extra 60 gold that I just wouldn't have gotten in the past, and it's gonna get you to that Helm Dom 2 faster, that drums, that AC, right? Whatever item you're buying. And yeah, in terms of the item build for Lycan, I have a bit of a hot take on the hero. I have 2 hot takes. The first one is that I think, well, you rush Helm Dom, and then after that, you actually buy a Blightstone and Atos. The reason why I say this is, well, first off, you're universal, so you do get damage from int, but that's not as important. I just think that like the big issue with this hero is lockdown, and keeping people in place, even for like a second or two, makes a world difference because it lets your units rip into them. And then after that, you buy drums so that while they're 8 toast, your units hit really fast, really hard, right? They crit from your ult and then they get bonus attack speed. Then you buy an AC. If the game requires BKB, you can just skip all this and go BKB. Or if it's a broken AC game, you need the armor, you can do that as well. I'm totally fine with any of these builds. But yeah, I just think that the Blightstone compared with Howl armor reduction, especially the talent at level 10, is insane. But yeah, this hero just got buffed. I think these builds are something to keep in mind. In terms of the skill build, I think 411 tends to be the best. If the lane is easy, you can go 402 and just deny a ton of creeps. Then we have Disruptor. As a support, this hero received a major buff in its ability to trade in the laning stage. Basically what they did is they increased the slow on the Thunder Strikes. Everyone went from 0.1 slow to 0.4. That is a 4x in value. And you might be like, oh, speed, come on, you can't see it like that. It's not a 4x in value. I mean, it is. And the laning stage is very, very noticeable. It's not even just the laning stage. It's just the ability to track people down at any stage in the game, because this is a value point ability. Sure, there are builds on Disruptor that revolve around maxing Thunderstrike, but they're far and few between. They are not the popular build, and I definitely don't recommend it. You want to max Glimpse, and then you want to max Kinetic Field to, keep people where you glimpse them and keep them in your ulti. So yeah, the level 1 Disruptor Q buff is not only a laning stage buff, where it helps you get a ton of autos off, it helps you track people down with Glimpse. It helps you set up for Kinetic Field if you don't have Glimpse, right? It does a lot for this hero, and so as a hero, it's a 51% winner hero now. I'm a big believer in Disruptor if you get a couple of games in, and it really does counter a lot of mobile mid. So if you see a mobile mid against you, or you think that the enemy is going to pick it, right? Or you just don't like playing against them. Maybe your position 4 is like a non-lockdown hero. Disruptor is some of the best lockdown in the game. Then we have Lich, another hero that received pretty direct buffs this patch. What they did is they buffed his W. It does more damage in the later levels now. And on top of that, his shard, which is really the main thing that I love. Unfortunately, it's like CM shard, right? I just love rushing the shard on this hero, but they nerfed CM shard, rest in peace. What you can do now is you can throw your ultimate, your Chain Frost, at the ice spire. So if you don't know what Lich shard is, you put down this spire, this like block of ice, right? You put it down, and then it slows first off, and then it bounces the Chain Frost. So if someone is isolated, you can actually kill them. Previously, if someone is isolated, Lich basically can do nothing to you besides stun you for a little bit, which is good, but you can't do much and you'll probably die to the person. But now if Lich is getting gone on, or if he finds someone off on their lonesome, he can drop the Ice Spire and ulti. And they just changed it where you can now ulti off the Ice Spire. So let's say someone's running away, right? You can drop the Ice Spire and then you can throw your Chain Frost and it'll actually catch up to them. Right? Or if, maybe your teammate is stunning someone, this is probably the more practical case. Your teammate is stunning someone and you just want to immediately get that Chain Frost damage going. Place down the Ice Spire, which has decent cast range. Then you drop your ulti and then, you get that going. So yeah, it's very, very powerful. Huge fan of this hero. Huge fan of QW max, just going crazy damage and then buying your shard almost ASAP. The next build is a carry build. I just like to give a couple of my opinions on Drow. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know that Drow received major buffs in this patch. The major buff in this patch was that multi-shot went down in cooldown by 3 seconds at max level. Now to compensate, they actually made the 15 talent, the multi-shot cooldown, worse, but not by enough. Even with that talent, it goes lower than previously, right? So major buff to Drow Ranger now, where this hero's multi-shot is just such a low cooldown. And that's key because in the early game, this is your damage spell, your farming spell, your wave shove, even your scouting spell, right? It can tell you if people are coming, right? If you really need to use it like that. And so it does everything. This is Drow's main spell. And so a major buff to your major ability is going to make you shoot up in win rate, and it certainly did that to Drow. Now, my opinion on the hero that I'd like to say is, in terms of skill build, of course you're maxing your E, 214 tends to be the build, 204 is fine if you don't need Gust, and then in terms of items, it's just Treads, Wand, D-Lance, but from there, people get really, really greedy. I just can't ever get behind it. Like, every time I see these Dragonlance Ag Shadowblade builds, I just want to go insane. Now, honestly, with the Shadowblade buffs, I think Dragonlance Shadowblade is somewhat justifiable. Like, I really like Dragonlance Shadowblade Pike or Dragonlance Pike Shadowblade, due to the fact that Shadowblade just has such a long act now. You can really use it to get around that fight, right? You can stay in the Shadow Blade longer using that bonus 20% movement speed. And that's huge on ranged heroes that tend to be very, very slow. So huge fan of Shadow Blade Drow, but like I'll see people just go literally Dragonlance, Yasha, Axe. They have no defensive capabilities. It's not like they can use the invis and get off a good gust and a multi-shot and like start the fight like that. They just have to pray their team goes in first and hope the enemy team never finds them, right? And I just don't like those builds. So in terms of Drow, Pike, Shadowblade, Butterfly, that is the angle I really suggest going. After that, you can go Manta, got nerfed. You can also go Sanjin Yasha if they have a lot of stuns. And then, of course, prioritize your shard. They giga buff this hero shard. I still don't think people realize how broken Drow shard is. Not only does it put you on a high ground that can make people lose vision of you, it also makes you keep your ulti when people are melee range of you, right? So previously, if someone was on top of you and you're playing Drow, you would lose your ulti, right? And you just wouldn't marksmanship proc. And then you just don't do any damage. Now with the shard, that just goes away if you're on top of the glacier. So if a Morphling goes on you, you just completely out-man-fight him. And people just won't buy it. I'm like, I can't believe people don't buy this shard. So buy it third or fourth item every single game. Then we got Bristleback. Literally just gonna skim over this hero because I've talked about it a billion times on this channel. I just think that the Bloodstone Rush on this hero is insanely good. I've been thinking about whether or not the Bloodstone Rush or the Axe Rush is the way to go. Been going back and forth. I think honestly Bloodstone is the way to go. I'm still debating it, still doing research, still testing, but Bloodstone Bristleback, you just disassemble Vanguard, so you rush Vanguard, you disassemble the Vanguard into Bloodstone, then you buy your shard. After that, you go Kaya Sanj or Eternal Shroud, and you're just a complete nuisance in the front line. Your hero is just so obnoxious. Of course, this is all with Mana Boots, right? So you go Mana Boots, then Vanguard, then Bloodstone, and then you go Kaya Sanj or Eternal Shroud. On top of that, please buy the shard, guys. The shard is crucial to this hero, crucial, and it's crucial to making Bloodstone better as it applies your goo and it applies a cool stack, making your next quills much more effective because they've lost armor. All right, now for the final two builds of the video, I got some really wonky stuff here, so hear me out. The first one is what I like to call the Peter. I have a coaching student, a friend of mine named Peter, and he goes the stupidest items, but sometimes they cook. Sometimes they cook. And this one, I'm a little hesitant. I'm gonna make some adaptations to the build that he goes, but it cooks a little bit. All right, so Underlord received a major buff this patch. His E, instead of giving you 2 damage per creep, gives you 3. And that adds up quick. After a creep wave, you're getting 4 extra damage. It makes a big difference, right? So that's the first thing I'd like to say. The second one is that this hero's Ags now increases the radius, if you buy it, it increases the radius of Pit of Malice, right? Your W, by 100. And if you have Bloodstone, it increases the radius by 75, right? So if you have Bloodstone and an Axe, your Pit of Malice is like half the screen. It's really funny. It's really, really funny. And then if you have an Axe, when you use Portal, it creates another Pit of Malice. So you can have these 2 giga Pit of Malices. And so what he does is he goes like Axe, Bloodstone. But the thing is, his first item will be kind of something I don't like an Echo Saber. Or literally like rushing the Bloodstone, and I'm just not a fan of this angle. I think it's just not useful enough. So what I recommend is going Atos, like kind of sticking to the standard route. Atos, I like Atos in a Blade Mail because Atos gives you a lot of HP. Blade Mail allows you to just run in, right? You're gonna click Pit of Malice, you're gonna Atos them. The Atos sets up for the second route of Pit of Malice. Then you click Blade Mail. Now, once you have Blade Mail, you buy a Bloodstone, you have a lot of spell lifesteal, it increases the AoE of your Pit of Malice and your Q, right? Your Firestorm. You're very tanky. And yeah, you can just kind of run in with a Bloodstone with an Atos. You set up, you control, you get in the way, you do a ton of damage, you have a giga root, you reduce damage, and then you buy an Axe and you can do it twice, right? And so that is what I recommend. And then late game, you buy a Wind Waker because if you use it on the enemy, you can root them again in the pit because you can use them and they will come down and get rooted again. So like root, Atos, root again, Yules, root again. And then you can Axe as well if you want, or ulti. It's pretty insane. And then finally, this one, I'm literally going to cover it quickly. If it really comes into play and seems to be even decent, I'll make a full video on it, but it's Tinker Support. This hero received major buffs as a hero, but Tinker Support's really interesting because honestly, it has some really interesting talents, really interesting parts about it. So first things first, it has 6 armor. It is a 6 armor ranged hero, which this is like Gyrocopter territory. And that's a big reason why Gyro support is viable because Gyro has 7 base armor. Tinker has 6 now, which is just insane. From there, so basically your E is this pretty insane ability. When you put it on people, it has a 15-second duration on a 12-second cooldown. Obviously you can rearm it. But now it has an 850 cast range instead of 650, which was terrible. It has 850, 200 more cast range. It makes this ability way more viable. And so the build that I recommend you go, I think there's a couple of angles. I think the best one is probably just laser still, like maxing laser. So like 411 and then maxing defense matrix. As good as missiles can be, I think like spamming missiles, just like off cooldown spamming missiles, you're just gonna run out of mana. It's better to have like laser and defense matrix, which are just overall higher impact abilities if you have like less total abilities. You know what I mean? Sure, if you can click like 15 heat-seeking missiles like Core Tinker can do in the late game, fine, but that's not what you're doing, right? You just want to apply defense matrix to your frontliner, and then they have 40% status resist, and if they get gone on by certain stuns, they just don't really get stunned, right? And so yeah, this is what you do. It's just extremely, extremely useful. When you have your ulti, you can just TP around the map, you can refill bottles, you can be a miniature courier. And what my friend Derek suggested as well is that you max laser and make an ancient stack for yourself. And yeah, this hero can farm ancient stacks at level 7 when it has max laser, as long as you smoke yourself. And the reason why this is good is it's a bit hard to get levels on this hero. The biggest downside is its early game is not necessarily the best. It's mid game when you have max laser, max defense matrix, or you can obviously go like max laser, max missile, and then eventually go back for defense matrix are good, but you kind of got to get there. And one of the best ways to get there is to make a bunch of stacks and then laser them down. If you have like a 4 or a 5 stack and you smoke yourself and laser it, you'll get like 2 or 3 levels. It's pretty insane. And then finally, the last thing to mention about this hero is the talents. At level 10, you get mana cost. At level 15, you get defense matrix damage absorbed. So you can literally absorb like 400 something damage. It's really insane. And at level 20, you get defense matrix grants 25% cooldown reduction. So if your teammates are just farming around the map, or you have like a Terrorblade and you put this on him and he clicks meta or he clicks illusion, it's just a way lower cooldown. It's really funny. Obviously this applies to like a Pango, right? Because it's permanent uptime, defense matrix. So like for a lot of heroes that just need CDR to farm, it's just insane, right? It's absolutely broken. So really a big fan of this talent. And the final best build of patch 7.5D is signing up for Raid with the link down below. You'll get $100 in free rewards, so go ahead and try it out now.